probably becoming pretty obvious that I'm a sucker for a good road trip. So when Nissan called me up and asked me if I wanted to take a brand new Nissan Pathfinder from Toronto to beautiful Lakeville, Connecticut, who was I to say no? But before we get here, let's go back to the beginning, because as they say, the journey is part of the adventure. Okay, we're about to hit the road. We're all loaded up. First stop's the border, then off to Connecticut. As you can see, there's more than enough space in the Pathfinder for all our stuff. With the third row folded down, probably could have fit it all in with a third row up, but I don't need it, so might as well use the space. I'll get you back to this week's review in a second, but first let's talk about suspensions. Whether it be an upgrade or replacing worn out parts, fixing a vehicle suspension can be quite costly. Thankfully, this week's sponsor, Strutmasters, is here to help. Founded in 1999, Strutmasters offers affordable total solutions to fix costly complex air, magnetic, electronic, and hydraulic suspension systems. Whether you're an at-home mechanic or a professional repair shop, Strutmasters aims to exceed your expectations with a massive inventory of suspension pieces for different cars, trucks, and SUVs. Heck, Strutmasters even makes components for motorcycles. Strutmasters products are made of high-quality steel, many of which are manufactured in the US. They also offer a free shipping option within the continental United States. So if you need anything for your vehicle suspension, follow the link in the description below and visit Strutmasters today. We're in the USA now. We're in the state of New York. We're about halfway across it on our way to Lime Rock, just stopping for a quick snack. Pathfinder's been great. It's actually getting over 31 miles per gallon on average. I mean, we're mostly doing just highway driving, but that's pretty good. Anyway, we'll get back on the road. We're gonna get off the interstate finally in a little bit and take some back roads out towards Lime Rock. Okay, so I had it wrong. We're actually doing 32.7 miles per gallon right now after 238 miles and almost 4 hours of driving. It'll be interesting to see what we are at the end of this trip, but I wasn't expecting it to be that good. So we just spent 8 hours in and out of the car, probably 6.5 driving, 1.5 taking breaks. By the time we got to the hotel here, none of us in the driver's seat, the front seat, or the middle captain's chair felt sore or stiff or had any limbs fall asleep. In fact, my two passengers each had 2 naps along the way. So the comfort was great. The suspension, it swallows up bumps really well. You do hear every bump you hit, especially the bigger ones. You can hear sort of the thud of the suspension and tire, but you don't really feel it. Wind noise is actually really good. We went through some really windy stretches and I wasn't hearing it, and it wasn't making it hard to talk or listen to the radio or anything like that. So kudos there. Handling, I mean, it's a big 3-row SUV, handles fine for what it is. I mean, you're not gonna tack corners in it. When we did our big comparison of 3 rows, about 1.5 years ago, we had the Rock Creek, and we said the Pathfinder drove the most like a traditional truckish SUV out of the group. And with the Platinum here, a lot of those traits are kind of gone. It's probably a combo of suspension tuning and tires, and this one obviously has far more options than the Rock Creek, so I get my nice multi-power seat with ventilation. We have 3-zone climate control. The middle row is leather captain's chairs with tons of storage and stuff. So anyway, it's been a great road trip companion. I can't complain. I mean, that's what this segment's built for. Does it have as much space and room as a minivan? No, and it's probably not as comfortable overall, but it really handles hours upon hours on the interstate. But earlier I talked about the fuel economy. Let's see where we're at now. Okay, I haven't looked at this since I last made an update, about almost 4 hours ago. So let's see where we're at. So after 407 miles, we're averaging 32.7 miles per gallon, and you see our average speed is 60. That's because we're doing in the low 70s on the interstate, and then there's some idling and park time with our different stops, and then the last hour was more around 40 miles an hour going through these back roads. Okay, we made it. We are in Lakeville, Connecticut. Cue the sign where I am. Iron Masters Inn on Main and the Southwest Mexican Grill. Check that out too. So yeah, the reason we're here is for the first ever Nissan Sentra Cup race in the United States. But right now I think I might go check out that Mexican restaurant because it smells great, and my family and I need to settle in and get ready for tomorrow morning's race action. So I'll see you then. Okay, me again. Gotta show you this. Is this the coolest part of the hotel? I think so. Okay, so we finally made it to the track. We've camped out here, get a good view of a couple turns. We're up on the hill back up there. Oh, sounds like they were going to get started. So I think I'm gonna head back up to my seat. I'll have lots of footage of different practices, qualifying, and races through the day. And then tonight it's back to the hotel, back out here tomorrow, and then the drive home. Like any good race weekend, it's a full setup here. We got vendors and food everywhere. I really like how they've kind of made this little corral. Looking forward to trying some things out, like the coffee and maybe a burger later. Just lots of good stuff, but I'm gonna go do some shopping now, see if I buy anything. All right, merch acquired. I'm gonna go back to the track and watch the Sentra qualifying. So the second race of the Sentra Cup is supposed to be started now, but as you can see, conditions have taken a slight turn. So hopefully this storm passes quickly, and after delay, the race will get back on. After a great weekend of watching racing, it's time to say goodbye to this beautiful place and head back home. But we still have 400 miles ahead of us inside the Pathfinder. So once I get home, I think I'll have some final thoughts on how this is as a long distance road trip family vehicle. So in the end, we did over 800 miles in the Pathfinder, and the efficiency did drop a bit. We ended up at about 30.5 miles per gallon at an average speed of 50 miles an hour. It was a little slower ride home, but that's still pretty good for a big V6 making almost 300 horsepower in a 3-row SUV. Sticking on the topic of the engines, so this is one of the last naturally aspirated V6 engines in the segment. It's a 3.5 liter, and like I said, it makes decent power, but it does lack that low-end torque of a turbo engine. Around the city, you actually don't really notice it as much because the engine's so responsive. It's more on the highway when you want to do a passing maneuver. You need to really press the accelerator and wait for the transmission to kick down a couple gears, and with 9, there's quite a few to go through before it gets up to the engine's sweet spot and you can pull the pass. It's fine for the segment. That's just a segment thing. This is sort of what you expect power-wise and performance-wise in the segment. So I can't complain. And I will make another point about how nice the 9-speed auto is compared to the old CVT. I like CVTs, but this 9-speed does a really good job of keeping smooth, kind of staying in the back end, and usually having the engine in the right gear at all times. On the long distance on the interstate, I turned off the steering assist because the lane keep assist on Nissans I always find is too aggressive, and when you do hit a line, it slows you down as well as putting you back in your lane, which if you're trying to pass someone isn't great. But the vehicle doesn't really need it. I mean, it tracks straight. Rarely did it feel like it wanted to drift on its own from lane to lane. So for what it's meant to do, haul people long distances or just across the city in comfort, it does that really well. The suspension is quite comfortable. As I said earlier, bumps get absorbed better than average, but you do hear some of the harder bumps through the suspension, but you don't necessarily feel it. So style-wise, although it's got a little update here and there, the Pathfinder's not the most stylish either inside or out. There are more stylish vehicles in the segment, but it also isn't one of the worst, or I wouldn't call it ugly. It just blends in with the scenery, which in a vehicle like this isn't necessarily a bad thing. Everything's very functional inside. I like that there's still a lot of hard buttons, especially for all the climate control and to get to the main menus of the infotainment screen. And there's a volume dial and a tuning dial, which I'm a big fan of having both. I hate it when there's one missing or neither. The digital gauge cluster, quite configurable. There's two different sort of main setups, and then you can change the information within the screens. This is a very small nitpick, but after 800 miles of cruising, it's something I noticed with my family on board. If you're listening to satellite radio, it doesn't show you in the gauge cluster what song's on, just what station. And there's a ton of space, so they can easily display it. So if someone's asking who is that artist or what's that song, you have to go through the menu if you're using navigation or a third-party app like Waze, which, again, very small nitpick, but it gets annoying. On the comfort front, I found the front seat perfectly comfortable. I didn't have my legs going to sleep or anything, even after 4 to 8 hours on the road. My front passenger, on the way down, didn't mention anything about comfort, but on the way home was mentioning how she didn't find it to be the most comfortable seat. There's so many places to store things up front. There's the little shelf for the passenger. There's different cubbies in the center console. There's the big bin underneath the armrest. There's even more storage underneath the center console. It's something that's becoming more the norm in this segment as three-row crossovers continue to take the place of minivans. So people are expecting more minivan-like features. I mean, in the rear, each door has 2 cup holders, and then there's another 2 in the middle. So drinks aplenty are fine back there. Juice boxes, of course. So being the Platinum, again, it's sort of what you expect in the segment. I keep getting back to that, but that's really it. Is the Pathfinder sort of ticks off every box you'd expect in a three-row crossover. It doesn't necessarily excel at too many of them. I mean, fuel economy is one it does, but it also doesn't falter. So it's sort of that good blend for a family. And if you're like the style or you're like a Nissan long-term buyer, you're probably gonna like the Pathfinder. Being the Platinum, it's full of features. It doesn't have as many features as some of the competitors, but it has more than some others. The vehicle itself is pretty well isolated. Having driven a similar sized luxury three-row the week before on nearly the exact same roads, you do notice the difference going from luxury to even high-end mainstream. That's not to say this is unrefined or unsophisticated. It's just not as overly engineered to keep out sound vibrations, which is why you pay such a premium for a luxury vehicle. So after a full road trip test on the Pathfinder, how do I feel about it? Well, honestly, I have more appreciation for it than I did before. I always thought it was sort of a mid-pack player, but I think it's a little better than that. It's definitely right in the thick of things with all of the front runners, and it's really going to come down to what do you prioritize the most. If you don't prioritize any one specific thing, this might be the right kind of vehicle because it does everything good. Not many things excellent, but nothing really poor either. So there's no real compromise. It's just sort of one of those vehicles you get and forget about as it works how it's supposed to every day. And I think for a lot of families, that's what they want. So if you're in the three-row mid to large size SUV segment, check out the Pathfinder. Take it for a spin or take it for a long distance drive.